Bryan, I wanted to ask you, with this film, with choosing Apocalypse and then using the early reveal of Apocalypse, I know that there was some fan backlash, and then you kind of came forward recently and explained that, and it made perfect sense. But I'm curious, now you have Fox pulling out of Hall H, kind of as because of these early teases kind of getting out and leaving the wrong impression. And I'm curious if that impact is felt on you, or with any future projects you do.
Well, very often I think a lot of those decisions are informed by lots of things, economics, a lot of actor availability. Sometimes you just, especially with casts this big, getting everyone in one place at the same time. Hence we're all here in London, because of certain, geography. So it doesn't, each movie is different. I always, work with marketing, with publicity, and try to get the right message out. The example of the first image of Apocalypse, it happened to be everyone looked pink because it was the light effect that accommodated a visual effect that wasn't there. I even looked at the picture and, ignorantly, I was like, yeah, they look cool, because I remembered, because I knew what was supposed to be there. Obviously, fans, didn't. But, a backlash is nothing that, upsets me, because I've dealt with it. When I cast Hugh Jackman, 6'3" actor, to play a 5'4" Wolverine, can you imagine? I was crucified. Then, the first image of Quicksilver, oh my God, he looks ridiculous. No, he's a young kid in the 70s. He should look like this. Right. And then suddenly people love the scene. Hugh Jackman's done okay by Wolverine. If not, obviously. So there's always going to be some of that in the blogosphere amongst fans. I do my best as a filmmaker just to focus on the movie at hand, and if there's a pre-existing fan base, listen to it very carefully, and in the end, service the movie, service the fan base as best I can, but also service people who aren't aware of the comic or whatever the fan base is and are coming to it fresh. Even with this movie, if they've never seen an X-Men movie, I'm very aware, and I want them to be able to enjoy Apocalypse fresh. And, in many ways, Apocalypse is an origin story, which would maybe seed you to go back and visit the other ones.
I talked to Simon earlier today, and he said that the plan, for him anyways, is to push the next X-Men film into the 90s era. So I'm curious if, for you, is that something that enters into your head? I mean, do you have a 90s set X-Men film in your head, with, ideas in terms of what you want to push forward with that, or do you have to take a break for a while before you come back to this universe and thinking about it?
No, I've always said, when I originally set the trend of jumping decade to decade with First Class, which I produced and wrote the story for, and then Days of Future Past in the 70s, jumping decade, and now this in the 80s. So it's a natural progression to go to the 90s. So that's something, he and I have talked about. Beyond that, Simon can, begin a process. To what degree I'm involved will depend on where I'm at any, time in my life as a person and a filmmaker. But I always like to do something in between, whether it's in television or movies, so I don't, I'm not just simply, making X-Men movies my whole life. And so there's a movie I hope to make next, 20,000 Leagues at Fox, actually, and then, we'll see how X-Men evolves, but I can't see myself abandoning the franchise, and I'm happy to see it progress in that manner. I think, though, we've opened up the door to all kinds of timelines. We're producing a television series, Simon and I, with Lauren Schuler-Donner, about called Legion, which is in a sort of an alternate space from the X-Men universe. There's lots of different places you can go, especially now that we've set it up that way.
I just wanted to ask you kind of what you thought about Deadpool and how he fits into the overall X-Men universe at this point.
I first saw Deadpool in a rough cut form with a small test screening. Half of the audience actually recognized me, so I was very self-conscious watching the movie. But once it got started, I found the humor, Ryan Reynolds, just so funny, so talented, and all the meta humor, particularly the jokes about my own films, so wonderful and in a way comedically flattering that every time my boss, the head of the studio, was looking over at me, I was just laughing out loud and then trying to cover myself because half the audience knew I was sitting there and I didn't want to go overboard, but I was genuinely, and I very rarely LOL, in a movie, and it just, and yes, I do feel he fits into the entire X-Men universe because they're not just funny, irreverent meta moments in that movie. There's some genuinely deep, serious, and emotional moments in that movie. And Deadpool represents the ultimate themes of X-Men, the outsider, hiding in the shadows. Will he be accepted? Won't he? How does he react to that? And he just happens to do it in a heightened meta, comedic, and at times ultra-violent way. X-Men in a different way. So he fits magnificently, and I hope to see a day when one day he crosses paths with my X-Men.